music multiverse listeners, and welcome to another episode of Unknown Sundays, where we take an artist, a band, or something relatively interesting in the music industry that might be relatively unknown to most of the masses and might have the ability to become something our listeners, our watchers, to explore. Please remember that this is an extension of the article section on beyondyourradio.com. So if you want the full details written there by me, it's there for you. Tonight, we explore the unabashed technical, industrial, and dark wave dance of Project Pitchfork. This Unknown Sundays 2024 all starts by hearing a song that came through a music channel or an edgy radio show. There were still a few there at the time that didn't bow to the forthcoming algorithm of radio trash. This was 1997, in case you're wondering, and I was certainly, gobbling up the industrial section of the music of Skinny Puppy from Canada, and it was a way of led to most other albums in their catalog and other bands that are sort of in that ilk. So my ear was, on the hear out for anything that sounded like or would have that experience, considering how much I was really enthralled by the process, which was Skinny Puppy's return after the death of the lead singer back in 1996. So when I heard this infectious industrial groove, progressive metal, riff-tastic, Euro growl and refrain, my mind is collapsing. My mind is collapsing. I thought for sure Skinny Puppy had somehow had an extra track that I'd missed. There was a technique and a techno approach to it that kind of made me suspicious of that, but nearly dead certain it was Canada's favorite industrial band. Well, as it turns out, I'm sure you are familiar with how hard it is to track down a song back then if you didn't hear somebody say what it was, because you couldn't go back in time and see their radio listing. Actually, you could if you had script and some radio shows, not all. I can't even remember how I managed to exactly find out the name of the track, but I knew that it wasn't Skinny Puppy. Eventually, I got to Project Pitchfork on Unknown Sundays 2024 with the song 2069 AD, which comes from the album Chakra Red, which has an exclamation point upside down and right side up at the end. That took me until 2001 to actually find. I'll note that on the website, if you're looking to the band's website from our article, I could not link it as their site is currently under construction. So by the year 2000, I had exhausted approximately 10 trips to HMV, Sam the Record Man, Tower Records, Record Theater, and countless private stores, 2 trips across the Atlantic to try and find them. Not that I went there to get music, but I was there. I was really hopeful in Paris to finding them, but what I found was something else that'll make an Unknown Sunday. Sure, I had been able to procure a few albums from Project Pitchfork that came prior to that. But let me digress a second to give you the idea how I browse these record stores, so you might get an idea. And I'm not saying yours isn't the best way either, but here's what I do. I always go to the new wall first, new wall or new releases, just to be sure and make myself aware of what is, right? I don't want to miss a thing. So I do that. There's a reason why. So next, I'm going to go one by one alphabetically through the used bin. Now, all of this is a mathematical calculation based on that which I can spend. Now, sometimes I have a budget and sometimes I don't. But in actuality, the budget is what the budget is. You don't want to spend too much. So sometimes when you go to the new side, you find the title. You don't know anything about the band, nothing, but you know the album cover now. So now you're looking through the used bin and there's a promo copy in there, right? That's how you find these things and you pay way less. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes bands that are trying to expose themselves a little bit more, their pricing for the new album is a lot less. I don't think that's really true today anymore. Most bands are trying to extract some dollar there. So the $9.99 days of album releases are pretty much done. So anyway, third, after you've exhausted the used bin, you're going to go to the regular side. Now, the regular side, alphabetical, and of course they have sometimes they'll have more tabs of band names, whereas in the used bin sometimes you the alphabetical A, B, but in this sometimes there's miscellaneous too. So you got typical bands A and then miscellaneous A. At least that's how some record stores would hopefully do it. Most of them that I've been in anyway. So this works wonderfully to spend the least amount of possible time to achieve the possible amount of albums you can purchase within your budget. Now, some stores were clever enough. Well, they kind of aggravated me because my 1, 2, 3 gets ruined when you throw everything together. Buy Record Store did that a long time ago, where they started putting the used stuff right in with the regular. And of course, I understand space accumulation too. So anyway, I digress. So there I am. That's how I go through record stores. Did I also mention I was a pretty good restaurant equipment and supply guy, marketer, salesman, and a conceptualizer? So I've done work in that for many, many, many years since I was like really young. So I should have stayed there, but that's a story for another day and not certainly YouTube. I had done some work for a friend, business, a rather large project that did very, very well, despite some minor setbacks where the owner lost his finger in installing the walk-in, and I had the floors collapse under an enormous amount of weight of turkey that was brought in by skids, which I hadn't calculated correctly. So you can make mistakes. But anyway, that all went really well. And to thank us, he took my wife and myself to Vegas. Not all expenses paid, but the hotel was comp and most of everything else was too, because they're pretty high rollers there at the MGM Grand. I know. Wow. That's pretty cool, right? Yeah. They're very nice people, great people. And we had an awesome time between the Blue Man Group and everything else that was going on, the great food, people watching. Now, this was Super Bowl weekend in 2001. So this is, if you remember, it's the Giants and the Baltimore Ravens. So a lot of betting going on, and I'd like to thank the Giants for screwing up my 1 in 333 odds that one team would not score a touchdown, because it was looking really good, if you remember, that there was not going to be a touchdown because the Giants couldn't even cross the midfield pretty much. Instead, they ran a kickoff back and screwed me out of 50 times 333, which would have been really nice. But anyway, blackjack table and being at the other tables later on, it was fun. Played some poker. It was great. So we wind up $400 a head, maybe, and all said and done. So Project Pitchfork has been in the industry now since like the late 80s when they formed, and you've got this new, they start their album in like 92. They start albums in 1991. So go to a record store in Vegas. I'm pretty sure it was Tower Records. And finally, there's Chakra Red. And, was that the greatest find of all time for me in the holy grail things of what I was looking for? Maybe. I know it's an oddity, but that's what it is for me at this time. So their version of dark wave music was a smidge of like club, a heavy portion of industrial, and a split personality like Depeche Mode meets Skinny Puppy. And later, you might even say that they were the early foreshadow of what Rammstein is today, although they only came out in a short distance between each other, and they actually toured together. So I can imagine that was a double bill that I would have enjoyed immensely had I been able to cross the pond. The meshing of club, dark, heavy electronica with a sensibility of like Nine Inch Nails to Depeche Mode to The Fall, or Delirium, another Canadian band that had that ambient progressive electronica. It was the industrial panache and providence that this band technically has. Dark harmonies, you got elongated waves of synth. surrounded by goth. There's, the musicianship is really, really fantastic. Dark, obviously, but the band would continually progress through their years into conceptual albums. And not only that, they had conceptual arcs of albums too, which, when you're in as many albums and bands and exposures that I'm trying to get to, it's kind of very hard to listen to everything and understand where it's coming from. So the 3 album arcs I didn't quite understand, but conceptualized they were. Just when you thought they were narrowed in their wheelhouse of what they do, they kind of changed their sound nature to a lot more club and groove. Even though it's still on the darker side of things. So I can imagine that they've dropped a little bit of the metal or to the clubbing side, like a Prodigy or a Pendulum. I've never seen their shows, but I can imagine they have a definitive stage presence and an engrossing delivery that's worthy of their namesake. Their latest album, which released this year called Elysium, is not a return to form. It's actually the 3rd set in an arc trilogy that has some space idea or conceptualized album. So there's no metal format. There's no guitar work that would make you feel that. It's deep groove, synthesizer, club mix, and a voice behind the industrial, uncleanish type of vocal that works. They reach for heavy bass riffs, computerized deep drum tones, and much, much less from an electric guitar. They even link closer to dark harmonies, including a female vocal inclusion. But if you haven't heard the 2 prior albums, you're going to miss the concept of this final of the trilogy. But I will say that it does seem to be at the 19th album that they might be, trying to find a place to escape or find some sort of happiness in all of this. And it might be that it kind of relates to us of this time. And considering this album was several years in the making, because the first 2 came prior to the pandemic, that were called Accretion and Fragment, you can understand where their mindset may have been laid. After the 2 albums, the pandemic and the process of life changes, obviously delays, inability to tour, there's no question the band finds themselves trying to find, I don't know, a place and a piece in all this. The groove is everything, and the industrialization has been mostly removed from them at this time, but this has no bearing on what might be to come or what some of the prior records are. And there is, like I said, 19 to engross yourself in. This band had 11 million views on a song called Rain about 11 years ago, which begs you to question why they might not have been the big band. Why aren't they the Rammstein? Why aren't they the Depeche Mode? You can put them in a successful category of bands like them, as well as KMFDM, Frontline Assembly, and of course, Skinny Puppy. The video in the article does have that Rain video, so you can see it. Sorry. I also did, in the article section, I did link a live performance just to get an idea. With the longevity of this band and the strong catalog and creative dark nature and tones, Project Pitchfork could easily be in the discussion of a band that possibly could have been bigger than they are. What is big is their catalog. So if you have any love or interest in the bands I've already compared them to, as well as those of the current that might fall into that category of dark, gothic, industrial electronica, wave music, you should definitely give the German progressive dark band a generous listening to. Albums by Project Pitchfork in my collection: L'Embrasse in 1992, which is their second record. Alpha Omega in 1995. Chakra Red in 97. Daemonion in 2001. Inferno 2002. Cascade in 2005. And that about, nope, I have Dream Teresius in 2009. There are EPs too that hold some interesting stuff from 1991 all the way to 2007. I also have the 2007 one, which is Wonderland, 1 Million Faces. So did you know Project Pitchfork and this industrial club groove band from Germany that might have been the early version of Rammstein? Maybe you know why they weren't as large as they should have been. Maybe they were just too dark than Depeche Mode. What was your impression? I'd love to hear from you. Comment, like, subscribe. We're always interested in new subscribers, especially those that are willing to go where we go. We're on the web at beyondyourradio.com, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, of course. It's all about albums, bands, and artists in any genre or style. Join us next week, an exploration of odd instrumentation that are maybe too cool to pass up listening to. Go beyond your radio with us, a real music appreciation channel. Thank you for watching and happy listening.